Hello there, my dear. I am so excited to share with you something that's a little different than my regularly channeled messages. I told myself that I was going to present all facets of myself on this channel. And one of the big things and the reasons I call the channel Raquel Channels is mainly because I have learned throughout my short lifetime, because I'm not that old, I am older-ish, um, is that I am channeling in various ways. The cards are one way to channel, channeling from the records is another. Um, and then I feel like sometimes I channel when I write, like my poetry. And so I want to remind people like channeling is like a way of life. And when the divine is coming through you, you're just like the vessel for the thing that gets created as like a created being. And so you will notice there will be like these videos, maybe weekly, maybe every other week, where I'll share with you the way that messages come to me in life to also share with you. Because a lot of people think you turn on the camera, or I've been in meditation or in space in the Akasha with my guides, and they're leading me somewhere in order to share something with you. But it doesn't just happen when we're connected, like in the most obvious, like meditative state or in the most obvious, like centered way. It like comes in the way that we walk through the world, like every single moment, there are messages around us. And for me, because I am a lover of literature and learning and reading, like often, like literally books talk to me. And then when I read them, like stuff comes out of me and I channel other things because the book or the thing I'm interacting with brings something in me that like activates another message that is meant to come through. And so that's what this one is about. Today, I was led. I was in a bookstore and I went there just to like eat and write and read my own stuff. I didn't go there to buy anything. And then as I was looking to leave, they're like, nah. My intuition was like, nah, just go to this bookcase. There's like a book there for you. And I was like, okay. And they're like, there's a book that you're meant to share with people. Um, and by the way, this whole story, I hope also reflects and mirrors to you that you are often walking through the world, intuitively sensing where you're meant to go. And you might not understand it. And like, that's the point, right? Because one part of the bookstore I went, they're like, yeah, there's something there for you. I picked up the book, I read part of it. It was almost like a personality quiz. And then I read the entry in the book for it. And I was like, okay, I hear you. Right. Because there's a part of me that was doubting whether or not I should even create this kind of content for the channel. And they were quick to be like, no, we're gonna give you this. And they gave me this passage, and I was like, oh, this is like part of who I am is to share myself and what I learn and what I read with other people. And that's how I guide others too. And so I did that and I was like, okay, I'm complete. They're like, no, there's like something in the store for you to share with them. And I was like, okay, but I have a bunch of stuff at home. Like I have a library of books at home. I just pick something from there. You got, they're like, no, it's in here. And so they led me to this other part of the bookstore. And when I got there, I was like, oh, oh, oh. And then this title like caught me. And I was like, oh dear. It's called Emotional Agility. I'll be honest, I haven't read the book. Um, the way that I work sometimes is like I'll when I go to the bookstore, I'll open it or the library, I'll pick up the book, I'll read the title. And if it's nonfiction, like this one is, I sometimes I'll read the the sleeve, and sometimes I don't. Sometimes, like, especially when I know the book isn't for me, but it's for me to share with other people. I just like they're like, just turn to a page, we're gonna give you what you need. And so when I turned to this book and this page, there was a whole section, and I was like, oh, this is good stuff. And so I know nothing about this book. Maybe another video will come out and telling you a little bit about it once I get into it. I can't tell you I agree with all the stuff in it. I'm just telling you I was led to it. There's a section here someone's supposed to hear, someone, as in a batch of you are meant to hear. And what I tend to do is I'll read out loud the passage and I'll see what comes through and see what connections are leading me to share with you about other things. And we'll see how it goes. Like, this is the beauty of trying things out and you all letting me know how it lands in the comments too is part of this process. So here we go. This part of the book is called Walking Your Why. And it seems to be in the middle of the book, straight up in the middle of the book. And the section I was called to is called What Do I Want My Life to Look Like? So I'm going to read it And then I'm going to give you a sense of why I have an inkling as to why they led me to this section. But here we go. What do I want my life to look like? Psychologists asked a group of people in their early 20s to write a letter about their current selves to their future selves. Some were asked to cast their minds just 3 months ahead to their near selves, and the others to jump forward 2 decades to their distant selves. They were then instructed, think about who you will be then, and write about the person you are now, which topics are important and dear to you, and how you see your life. In other words, they were asked to think about and articulate what mattered to them. After writing these letters, the two groups were presented with a questionnaire made up of three illegal scenarios: buying a computer they knew to be stolen, committing insurance fraud, or downloading media illegally, and asked how likely they would be to participate in them. The people who wrote letters to their distant selves are significantly less likely than those who wrote letters to their near selves to say that they would participate in any of the three unsavory actions. At first glance, it may not be clear how something like writing a letter to yourself, no less, could possibly change your attitude or behavior, or your attitude about behavior. But these writers were creating what's called continuity of self. By connecting with their distant selves, and with their values, they were able to understand themselves as people with core beliefs and a moral keel that would remain stable, even as other elements and situations in their lives changed. By contrast, the people who were asked to look only 3 months ahead continued to think of their distant selves, as research has shown we often do, as abstract strangers. They went on to make their choices accordingly, as if they were making them for someone else. After all, if you believe the person you'll be 20 years from now has little relation to the person you are now, why would it matter if you bought stolen goods, cheated your insurance company, or, to give some more common real world examples, took up smoking, squandered your retirement money, or loaded yourself up with credit card debt? Creating continuity of self can both help to prevent bad choices and encourage good ones. In another experiment, college age participants were told to pretend they just received $1,000 out of the blue. Then they were asked to allocate it into four different categories: use it to buy something nice for someone special, invest it in a retirement fund, plan a fun and extravagant occasion, and put it into a checking account. But before the subjects divvied up their imaginary windfall, researchers put each participant into a virtual reality environment. Half the group saw digital avatars of their current selves, while the other half saw digital avatars of themselves as they might look at the age of 70. As you might expect, the group who saw older avatars allocated more than twice as much of the theoretical windfall to their imaginary retirement funds. Taking time for the long view leads to actions that benefit the long term. Jeff Kinney is the author of the best-selling kids series Diary of a Wimpy Kid, 150 million copies sold in 45 languages. And while he's thrilled by the success of his work and plans to keep doing it, he also knows that this one single creation isn't going to be enough to sustain him forever. If my whole life were Wimpy Kid, he told the New York Times, it wouldn't be very fulfilling. I don't want to be designing Wimpy Kid pillowcases for the rest of my life. By connecting with his future self, Kenny found the motivation to alter his path to more fully align with his values. He opened a bookstore in his hometown where he occasionally teaches cartooning classes and works the odd shift at the cash register and in the cafe. For him, it's about giving something back to the world that has given him so much, and it feels right. If one kid's life has changed because of this bookstore, he said, then the whole thing was worth it. Kenny and Shadiak's stories also illustrate a much bigger truth. If you know your own personal values and generally live by them, you are also likely to be comfortable with who you are. You don't need to compare yourself with other people because you're a success by your own definition. Shadiak interprets success as living a life filled with love and community. Kinney interprets it as giving back. By their own standards, both men have made it big. Ooh, just take a moment to process what it is that is going through this magical mind of mine. And there's a reason, like the moment I got to that page in the bookstore, I was like, oh yeah, I gotta share this with them. And let me tell you right now, I was led to not read the whole thing and make any interpretation until like I got live on video because they were like, you read a part of it, you got a sense of it. Like I read like two paragraphs out of all of them, right? Sorry, I'm on Zoom. You see the thumbs up. So I didn't read much of this in depth while I was in the store. I just read the first title and I skimmed some of it and I was like, oh, this is it. And the main reason I said this was it because my intuition was like, oh, this is why the work that we do when we do any kind of energy work or meditation work to meet our future selves sort of anchors us in the choices and the decisions we make in the present like actually matter. And I think sometimes what the my guides are always leading me to do is like share stuff with people online that helps you all gather a sense of how true and real it is and like the material reality we exist within because often we can get lost in thinking like, oh, this is real only on like a metaphysical level or on a spiritual energetic level. And it's like, well, some of our brains are bigger and heavier than others, right? Like they're reminding me to tell you, like, I spent 13 years getting 3 degrees for a reason. Like the brain is a tough and very wonderful thing that loves to guide all of my life. Um, and that's because that's the water that we swim in, and that's the air that we breathe in, and the environments that many of us live in, right? Is that it values, especially in the West, it values the brain and the logic and all of that good stuff, right? Because I do think that there's a sense of good to it. I think there's a power to our brains and our minds. But when we only lead by that, like that becomes the place at which we meet ourselves to be like, is that really sufficient? Right? And what they're showing you here is that it isn't sufficient, right? Because the brain is going to go do what the brain does according to what it gets conditioned to do in our world today. And then you have to ask yourself, are you living according to the values of what you believe makes you feel good about existing and feeling fulfilled and being in the world the way that you are meant to be, right? And what I also love about this so there's that like energetic part of me that's like, oh yeah, that's what there's like scientific evidence that like the stuff I do with clients when they like meet their future self and like we have this whole encounter for your future self, like that it fucking matters, right? Um, and that's here, right? Like scientifically, they're like, let me give you the proof for that, right? Because my brain is like, it feels fluffy, la la la. Even though like when I encounter and I have those experiences just myself, like it changes me entirely over and over again in relation to what I'm talking to my future self about. But the other part of this section that they want me to remind you about is like values, right? And the next section here talks a little bit about um, how to identify your values. And they give you a couple of questions to start identifying your values. I'm going to give you a few though. I'm going to give you like a few other ways to do it because I've been on this search for figuring out like why did I decide to go down the path that I went down? Um, how did that lead me here? All that stuff. And so I think these questions are the beginning of it. And then I also think there's like a more fun way, other fun ways for you to explore your values. So if you're wondering like, okay, this lady wants to talk about values, they matter. Um, so what they're saying in this passage that I read to you is like values and being connected to your future self anchors you into your values. Because if you think of yourself, oh, this is becoming so much fun on Zoom as I record my video with the balloons. Um, so so those two things is what brings you back to making anchored decisions in the present, right? One is your connection with your future self, not future self a few months from now. And even they're saying like probably even a year or two isn't enough. Like you need to imagine yourself 10, 15, 20, 30 years out or more, right? Because these college students, I think in this study, met their person, like met themselves at the age of 70 and they're like 18, right? So you got to think of yourself way far out, right? Give yourself enough of that breath, right? So they're saying like that's one thing. And then the other is like your values. Those two things determine your actions and what you choose to do and where you find meaning and fulfillment, right? And so then they're saying here, These are some characteristics of values. They're saying they're freely chosen, they haven't been imposed on you. They're not goals, they're ongoing rather than fixed. Values guide you rather than constrain you. Values are active, they're not static. They allow you to get closer to the way you want to live your life. They bring you freedom from social comparisons, and they foster self-acceptance, which is crucial to mental health, right? They say above all, a value is something you can use. It helps you place your feet in the right direction as you journey through life, no matter where life leads you. And then they give you these key questions in this next section that I'm not going to read because it's a little too long. Here are a few questions to ask yourself in order to start identifying your values. Deep down, what matters to me? What relationships do I want to build? What do I want my life to be about? How do I feel most of the time? What kinds of situations make me feel most vital? If a miracle occurred and all the anxiety and stress in my life were suddenly gone, what would my life look like? And what new things would I pursue? Hmm. Hmm. They're guiding me to read the rest of this. The answers to these questions can help you start to figure out the guiding principles of your life, many of which are probably inherent, even if you're not explicitly aware of them. Are there particular areas in which people consistently seek your advice and expertise? Are you most alive doing certain activities and work projects? Is there a time when you feel most yourself? The thing to ask is not whether something is right or wrong, but rather how it relates to the way you want to live your life. When you know what you do care about, you can be free from the things you don't care about. Mm, mm. And the balloons that just happened before is a reminder because I always believe everything is connected to what is going on, right? It's a reminder for me to tell you that like doing your values and figuring out your values can also be fun. It can be a process of fun. So you can answer some of the questions, you can like pause me and answer some of the questions that I pose to you. And then there's like these are all the ways that I tried to figure out like what do I value? What the heck do I care about? Like what am I like this great question of like what do people seek my advice and expertise about, you know? And that's one of the big questions I've often asked myself in the past 5 years, like, what do people want from me that they think I'm great at, but I just like can't see? And can I think about that outside the context of what I do for a living? Because I've been doing what I do for a living for a really long time, right? So if I've been working with writing for a really long time, then it's not surprising that people wanted me to help them with their writing since I was quite young, right? But is that in my head, I'm like, is that the kind of writing I'm supposed to be doing? Just because people want me to help them with their writing doesn't mean like my role as a person who helps people with writing is like the thing that feels fulfilling. Because what actually feels fulfilling is the topic for which they're seeking my guidance, not the fact that I want to teach them about writing. I think I'm great at that. I mean, don't get me wrong. But the thing for which they're seeking my advice, which is writing, is the thing I love. Whether or not I want to help other people with, those are two freaking different things. And so they're telling me intuitively to share that with you. Like what people seek out your advice on, the fact that they want your expertise, they want you to pay attention, whether or not giving that expertise and being in a position of leadership of some sort or facilitator or guide, does that bring you like great joy or is just the thing that you spend your time doing like freaking amazing, right? Because it's good to make the distinction, right? Um, and other fun ways I've gone down the path of figuring out my values is like I love taking personality tests because they tell me things I can't see about myself. And then I also go to astrology, human design, and then there's a couple of other, there's like one other person, and then there's like a lot of career exercises that'll ask you about your values, like at work and overall what your values are. Um, and there's one that I took that I found really helpful, and it is free, so I might link to it below if you're interested. But it's this, a scholar. I wish I had her book near me. It's somewhere in my life. It's a scholar at NYU, and she did some really interesting work. And she has like a way for you to take a quiz to figure out what your values are. And then her book really kind of breaks it down. I mean, the quiz will also give you a really good response, but there were two things that came up in my quiz with her that reminded me like, oh, like this is important as I consider a change in career, as I try to determine what's going to bring me fulfillment as I start a business, or what do I really enjoy about being creative, right? And there were like two values um that were connected to other parts of me that I know about myself in human design. And one of them is like, for me, it's like about the journey of enjoying something, and that I have to like be like, I want to have a lot of people like, oh, I want freedom. I was like, no, I want freedom to set the pace to enjoy the thing that I'm working on and doing. Right. And that's a different sense of freedom because I'm looking for like the yummy morsel of like good living, like how good it feels to live. Right. Um, And then there was another value that I was like, oh, this confirms why I went into education. This confirms like why, um, what kind of work I want to do in the business, and the scale at which I want to do certain things in the business. And I was like, oh, this is really helpful to have. And there were a few others. So I want to remind you, like, values are not things that people tell you that you don't know about yourself. Usually when you go on all these sites and you figure out stuff, like as you're receiving these readings from people, or receiving readings from the personality quiz, like it should be a confirmation and a trigger in your like mind of like, oh right, yeah, that explains this, this, and this, right? Like sometimes we want to go, like I've been teaching for a while, and sometimes I'll give students some of these different exercises to do, and they'll be like, I didn't learn anything new. I'm like, but why are you expecting to find something brand new? What you should be looking for is confirmation and then curiosity and then question. Question whether or not something feels right and true for you. Because there are certain parts of human design for my chart I just don't agree with. And then other parts of my chart like confirm for me why I don't agree with certain things that they're saying in other parts of my chart, right? And so I want you to enter whatever journey you go on to determine what your values are with a sense of like pure curiosity. They're saying like, tell them it's about wonder too. Like, can you consider what kind of life do you lead when that value actually like centers, anchors your life and guides you forward? They wanted me to stop and not say anything after that. Because I want you to take that in, right? Like, because I think a lot of things are in our subconscious, and these things are guiding us forward and we don't even realize it. So can you imagine how much more powerful it would be, right? Like that's what these studies are about at the beginning. And that's why they're like, sometimes we want to anchor you back to physical reality. Like the studies are showing you that when you're in contact with and have an understanding of your values and you make that conscious, then look at the decisions these people are making. They're making better decisions about their money. They're making better moral decisions about whether or not they're going to follow certain guidelines and requirements of society, right? Um, and I'm sure they're saying the list will go on and on and on because you have a strong sense of like who you are. Because the discussion about values is about an exploration and a confirmation for you of what you've always known about yourself, but you haven't necessarily let that come forward and let that be the guiding force for whatever other things surround it, you know? And so they're asking me to give you an example, like, right, like if one of my values that I took from this personality quiz is this idea that I enjoy like knowing life, they gave me a word for this vision that I have of my life, which is to one day be sitting on a porch of this beautiful sprawling property looking out at the water and having like tea next to me and having my partner next to me. And I'm like sitting there in a rocking chair. They gave me a word for an understanding of the kind of life I want to build because I'm seeking to enjoy like the present moment, and not from a place of like absolute decadence and all this stuff, but like literal feeling like enjoyment, and that has to be part of my process, right? So that is in like direct contradiction almost with like capitalistic systems of like production that say like you do this to turn this out to get it done. Like there is no like process of enjoying that. It's just like you go and you do this and you do this and it turns out to be this and then you do it again and you do it again and you do it again, right? Um, and almost every job sort of looks like that, right? Depending on the kind of jobs that you're looking at, right? Um, but I'm talking more like standard jobs where like you're doing the same things over and over and over again over a span of time. And it may not even be every day because you might be imagining it's like a factory. It's like, oh, every day they do the same exact thing. No, I mean, I work as a faculty member. Like I do the same exact thing, but I do it every semester. Right. So look at your job. Like, do you do something every single year? Do you do something every quarter? Do you do right? Like, so in our system, like we're just like doing and doing and doing, and there's no sense of like pleasure to that. And that's in direct contradiction to one of my values, which is to fucking enjoy like life, no matter what I'm doing. And enjoyment to me is not like, oh my God, let's go party. It's just like, ooh, does it feel good to do this? Like a sense of pleasure. Like that is not something that is found in most roles within the workforce. People assume like, oh, you're passionate about it, so you'll enjoy it. It's like, but that's not what I'm looking at. Right. So that's what they're saying too, is that there's a sense of your values that are in contradiction to the way that we're conditioned. And so, what if you gave yourself and you went into this journey with a sense of wonder and with a sense of curiosity and a sense of like deep-seated, like being with yourself and everything that you have to offer and looking at it as like something wonderful and imagined what would it mean for one of like your new values to guide the path forward in your life? What kind of life would you be creating by then? What would your life look like at the age of 60 and 70 if those values guided your way forward, right? Because the other problem here, right, is the example they're giving you is like a super freaking successful person. They've made millions of dollars probably, and now they can do this, and now they sought this for fulfillment, right? And this is part of the problem with some of the stuff that's out there. They often give you the sense of like, oh, after you've got the millies. Now you could think about fulfillment. And I'm like, what about the rest of us, yo? Like sometimes some of us like don't compromise everything to get to the millies and then wonder about fulfillment. Like I'm still on my path to millies and I'm like, well, I want to do this with a sense of fulfillment, right? And so I want to remind you, even though the example in here is of someone who's already super freaking successful, now they give you an example of what they do to fulfill themselves because they're like, that wouldn't be so exciting if I just did that one thing forever. And I'm like, right. But what if some of us are like still looking for that thing that we're gonna make millies off of? Like, what do we do along the way? And they're reminding you like you have to be guided by your values all along the way. Um, and so they're saying like explore that in your next sense of because they're showing me like many of us are at this crossroads and we feel like we have to choose these paths that we're on. And we're like, this is gonna be the thing, and like this is the path. And what they're showing me is that like you've made up this scenario where you have to like choose and that like you have control or that decision and that choice. And they're sharing with me, like, what if you just like threw that away and you just imagined you were in a forest and you were walking? And as you're walking in that forest, and they're saying, like, BT dubs, the forest is your freaking life. If you don't get the metaphor, there's the metaphor, right? So you're walking in the forest and you're not looking for a path, you're just walking it intuitively and also being guided by what you value. Because based on what you value will determine how you interact with the things in the forest, whether they're other people, whether they're the other trees and the other beings that are with you in that forest. And so they're wanting to remind you everything feels like so like they're like, it looks black and white. It's like either or, either or, either or, either or. This is definitive in alignment with my values, and this is not. And it's like, oh, but what if you trusted that the path that you're on right now, you intuitively also chose? Like something led you there, and it's revealing something to you about your values, whether your values are no longer in alignment or whether they are. No matter what path you're on, it is showing you something about whether or not you're in alignment with your values. Period. What would then you learn is your actual value? Like, what do you value from being there, right? What did you follow because that's what you valued? And do you still value it or do you not? And could you be honest with yourself about what conditions, circumstances, people, places, and things contributed to you establishing this as a value? And is that still true? Because they're also showing me like your values can change. They're like you can also make them fit what you actually value, right? And they're showing me like the most obvious one, right? Which is the value of like money and being financially resourced. And they're like, yeah, so like, does that come from you? Does that come from the places you were raised in? Does it come from the water and the air that you're breathing and taking in around you and the society and the family and the group of people that you're with? Like, where is it coming from? And then you get to decide, do you want to keep it? Do you want to shift and change it? Right? All right. That's all we got. And so I hope that was helpful. Let me know in the comments if it was, what it got you thinking about. Um, because I think values are like tricky, tricky, tricky. Um, uh-oh. I just pulled up another page. And they said they want me to end with reading this section of the book, which is a few pages later. They said walking your values is the name of this section. Of course, determining what you truly care about is only half the process of walking your why. Once you've identified your values, you then have to take them out for a spin. The forest, you hear me? The forest. This requires a certain amount of courage, but you can't aim to be fearless. Instead, you should aim to walk directly into your fears, with your values as your guide toward what matters to you. Courage is not an absence of fear. Courage is fear walking. Like, courage is fear walking. While I was reading that, they showed me an image of you being in the forest and you facing a lion. And they're like, what, you think you're not going to be scared? Of course you're going to be scared. Of course there's going to be fear. What are you going to do? That's the question. What would your values lead you to do when you're facing something that's really scary? And then they're like, think about beginning, middle, and end. They're like, what do you do in the moment to survive? What do you do to recuperate? And then as you move forward even further from that moment, what do you do afterwards, after encountering the lion, right? Several days later, months later, right? Yeah, they said to leave it there. They also wanted me to remind you the other reason I also decided to create a different piece of content for my channel, besides just me channeling, of course, is to show you that messages come in from everywhere, always around us, but also to show you like who I am, right? Because the beauty of the online realm is that when you click on a channel in YouTube, you get to like know somebody as a channeler, right? And me as a channeler is actually like I feel a little different than the person you just encountered right now. And that's also the point of what I would like for you to get comfortable with is that there are different facets to all of us who are here helping other people in the online realm and that you get to have access to those different parts of us. It's not just I show up to do my work as a channel and I give you messages and then I'm done and you have a sense of my personality. Meanwhile, if you like booked a meeting with me, you wouldn't hear me as a channel for a few minutes. Like I get to know you, have a conversation. So like this part of me comes out, right? The one that usually has glasses on and has a conversation with you and tells you about my day. Like I'm human, you, right? Like I always tell people, like I think a lot of what happens in the YouTube realm is like people want to show up and they want to perform or they want to do the opposite and they just want you to see them in their lives. But sometimes in the spiritual realm, we have a lot of people just out here walking and you just see them as a channel, but you forget, it sort of reminds me of like that thing that we have when we see teachers in the supermarket, like the teacher you spend all day with, and then you're like, oh my God, that person has to buy groceries. Oh my God, that person has to wash their hair and like get their hair cut and get their eyebrows done, right? And so that's the other part of why I did this is I'm like, I just don't want you thinking like that's just me. I'm also this other part of me that loves to read books and gets messages in a million ways, and my brain runs a mile a minute. And like that's why I love to channel because it like slows it all the freak down. And there's one sort of like radio channel and like that's it. Like that's one of my favorite things about channeling is like I can't get that overwhelmed. I mean, I do sometimes based on how many messages are coming through or if I meet with you one-on-one and there's like a lot of guides, but like there's one antenna here and when I'm tuned in, like I'm tuned in versus like today with the book, I'm like tuned into ideas and I'm thinking and then I'm like, I took this quiz and I did this and I'm like, we get to be human, yo, and we got get to also help you as a spiritual guide today. So that's what I'm saying. And I hope that this was supportive. Let me know in the comments if you check out or decide to do some values exercises because I love doing this stuff. And I do it more than once myself. I've done it with students and encourage clients to do it. And if you want to do it together, you're always more than welcome to look into Living Your Soul's Counsel, where I give you a reading and then we spend like 8 weeks together, actually slowing down to hear what the messages were, see what other things unfold in your life, to be able to continue giving answers to the questions that you asked. Because I think that's what people underestimate when you book a reading with anyone. It's like you've asked the question and the reader gives you the answer, and then your guide to the divine and everything around you continues to give you answers for however long the portal stays open, for however long you want it to be. And like that's the freaking magic. And that's why I work with people in like 8 to 9 week spans because I don't want to leave you with the message and you be like, oh, that's it. She gave me the answer. And now I can go do this. It's like, nah, dude. Like it says here, like values is the first work. Then you got to walk that shit. Right? So you receive the message and now you have to go walk in the world. You got to go be a mom. You got to go take the kid to school. Then you got to go to work yourself. And then the message is sitting there. It's like, right? And the universe and the divine is continuing to send you information because you decided to show up and ask the hard freaking question. Now all of a sudden, divine, God, guides, spirit, whatever you believe is like ready to hand you the answers in a million different ways, yo. And every time you take one small action because you heard the message and you continue to honor it, it like freaking like it's just amazing. I call it like an absolutely beautiful blossoming. They're saying it's like a blossoming reckoning that is here for your freaking greatest good. So if that feels good and right true for you, check out the link below and let's continue the conversation and I'll see you next time.